I was 24 years old. I dropped out of college. So
Tragic!
that was my 5th year in college. I went into college at 19. Long story short, I graduated at 18, though. I didn't graduate high school late. I went to a prep school after I graduated from high school, so I ended college at 19, 24, 5th year, dropped out. But I felt like I wasn't learning anything. I wanted to drop out the year before. I started reading books at 18. I read like 10 books that year at 18. Learning a lot about entrepreneurship. Always had a lot of ambition, always had a lot of drive, and I always had a vision for where I wanted to go in my life. So even though I didn't know what my purpose was, I had ambition. I knew what things that I liked, and I knew what I wanted out of life, and I knew that I was gonna go towards that. So when I was 24, that's when I gave up playing basketball pretty much, as I kept getting injured. And I always wanted to retire at 30, so whether I made the NBA or not. So if I made the NBA, I was gonna retire at 30. Cause at that time, even in high school, I just knew that I'm not gonna be playing basketball in my 30s. There is more to life. I don't wanna be traded and be controlled over like where I go and stuff. I wanna have authority and control over my life. That's why, one of the reasons why, I've always been into entrepreneurship. So when I was 24, I dropped out. So I wanted to drop out at 23. I was gonna tell my parents I was gonna drop out at 23. I didn't really have a plan. The Bible says where there's no vision, people will perish. I had a vision, but I didn't really have a plan. So at 24, I had a plan. I was reading a lot of books. I'm seeing entrepreneurs, doing things that I want to do. So I was like, bet, I know I could do that. They can do that, I could do that. Just do it my way. So that was my mentality at the time. So 24, I'm like, all right, I don't need this school stuff because, I switched my major 5 times. That's why I was, in college for so long, because I kept switching my major. I felt like I wasn't learning stuff, and I was really just doing it for my parents in a way. It got to that point. But then I was just like, nah, I got to do what I got to do for my life because I want to get to here, I want to get here, I want to get there. So, and I felt like schools hold me back. So what I did was I dropped out. And I felt like God was telling me to drop out. So when I dropped out, probably like 5 days, no longer than a week after I dropped out, my favorite entrepreneur, still to this day, DM me and asked me, was I a full-time entrepreneur? At the time, I wasn't. I'm still not a full-time entrepreneur. I low-key am a full-time entrepreneur. I'm not gonna cap, but I'm not the full-time entrepreneur that I wanna be right now, yet. But at that time, in 2022, I wasn't no full-time entrepreneur. So him telling me that was confirmation for me. I just felt like my favorite entrepreneur DM me, and it wasn't no automated messages out the blue. He asked me that. So I'm like, that's confirmation for me dropping out and stuff like that. Because I first dropped out, my parents was really upset about that. They didn't really, but when God's called you to do things, people not always gonna see your vision because, and I'm not saying my parents was led by fear, but people can be, led by other things and things like that. But that's why you gotta know what God has called you to do. So I dropped out. I started reading books. I got into sales. So when I got into sales, I really didn't want to do that, but I felt like God was telling me to do that. And even in college, I felt like he was telling me to get into life insurance, so which I did not want to do. So when I dropped out of college, the job options for me was warehouse jobs or sales jobs. I personally want to do the warehouse job. I like moving around, I like getting active and things like that. But I came across this book that's called Boss Move. So it was basically talking about, different stages of entrepreneurship and just making money and things like that. And communication and sales was like at the top. So at the time, I'm already making videos and things like that. So I'm reading the book, and it's basically saying, like, the way to make a lot of money, you gotta get into sales, you gotta get into communication and things like that. So I'm thinking, because he would actually say, the dude that wrote the book, he would be like, it doesn't take skill to work a forklift. So I'm thinking, dang, that makes sense. So long story short, I get into sales. I started learning sales. I didn't want to do it, but then as I started to do it, I started to realize this ties into entrepreneurship. You need sales for entrepreneurship. So what God was doing was he was preparing me. So at the time, I get a sales job with Spectrum. I'm learning sales. I'm doing good. I get like top 3 in the region 1 month. So I'm doing good. While I'm still building, my personal brand and things like that, still reading books. So then, long story short, as I'm doing all these things, my purpose is getting revealed to me. And so what I started to do was, make videos on my personal page talking about God. reading the books about sales, getting in front of the camera and things like that, knocking on doors. My job at the time was, not cold door, because low key was cold. They didn't know I was coming, but, it was a door knocking sales job. So when I first did it, I'm not gonna cap, I was a little nervous. It was a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I thought it was dangerous at first. But then I got comfortable fast. Like after my first time knocking the door, it just went away. It was just like, bro, this light. So I started doing that and I started to see how, it was like ministry in a way. And it was just helping me with my social skills, and it all tied into what God wanted me to do. So long story short, my purpose wasn't just revealed to me when I dropped out. It was something that God was already preparing me for my whole life, even when I was playing basketball. So long story short, if somebody's watching this right now, you're wondering what your purpose is, God's been preparing you for it your whole life. So then, like, when I was still playing basketball, I would watch sermons before games. I would, people on my team knew that, like, I loved Jesus and things like that. When I was in high school, I would write motivational things on my whiteboard that I had at the time. And then, I would just read that every day. So I've always been a positive person and things like that. I like working out. So that's another thing. I got a fitness brand I'm about to start. I'm about to get my NASM certification, things like that. So these are all things that I've been doing, my whole life. While at the time, all I could see was basketball. So the whole time I'm thinking, I'm spending all my life just playing basketball. Nah, that's all I could see at the time, but it was so many other things. So when, I tore my Achilles, I broke my wrist. That was the last big injury I had. So when I broke my wrist, and I felt a little depressed and things like that, because, I've been playing that my whole life. So it just felt like, dang, all that's gone. I didn't really feel like all that was gone. I really wasn't into depression like that either, because I just felt like I could finally live now. In a way, like, I could do this, I could do that, I could do like all these things. I could still play basketball too, not the NBA, but one of my goals is to own the team. I want to own the New York Knicks. I might not be the full-time owner, but if I could be partial owner or something like that, that's one of my new goals. But yeah, so I hope this is making sense. I hope I'm not jumping all over the place, but what I'm basically saying is your purpose is something that you'll find along the way. You'll start to see how God's been preparing you for it your whole life. Like, God was definitely preparing me my whole life. It wasn't until I was 24 I started to see more of the picture. So if you don't get anything out of this video, the older you get, you'll start to see the fuller picture of what God wants you to do for your life, but you gotta be yielding to Him. So when I was 24 and I started to become, more cognizant of, his ways and things like that from reading the Bible, I started to see, okay, I gotta give things up to receive the life that He has for me. So I gotta let go of this comfort of, just staying in school and, just step out on faith and trust myself. More importantly, trust Jesus and, go in the direction that He's telling me to go, be bold so I can become the man of God that He's called me to be, for my future family, for my future kids, for my future wife, for the future ministry that He's prepared for me and stuff. So when I did that, it's like everything just opened up. That's why I had an entrepreneur DM me. He actually DM'd me a second time, maybe like a couple months later and things like that. Just asked me what were my goals. So, that's another thing. Anytime God's called you to do something, He'll send you confirmation on, what you should do. And that's how you know that you're on the right path. There's a verse that says, when I turn to the right or when I turn to the left, God will guide you. So God was guiding me, God will guide you. I hope this is making sense. I don't really like sharing my life like that. I'm just getting better at it. That's a testimony video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share it with somebody who needs to hear some more.